Welcome to Elevate, the podcast where we dissect exceptional achievers who are consistently raising the bar personally and professionally to produce extraordinary results in investment real estate and ultimately in their lives. Now here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Elevate Nation, welcome back. This is Tyler Chesser. I'm so thankful to have you here, and I'm so blessed and grateful to be sitting with Spencer Hilligoss. Spencer, how are you, sir?
Doing great, Tyler. Super excited for this conversation today. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
No, absolutely. And, it was great to get to meet you face to face in Denver recently. And I know that we connect on so many different levels, whether it's real estate, whether it's some much deeper concepts as well. So definitely excited to dive into all that. And I want to, first really kind of welcome back Elevate Nation, because it's time to take it to another level. And that's what we do here. We raise the bar. And, our mission is to identify and apply how the best of the best are raising the bar personally and professionally to achieve greatness in real estate and beyond. And it was fun right before the show. You're talking, man, I'm excited to talk about personal growth and professional growth. And we're definitely going to dive into so much there. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about habits, routines, of course, systems and tools, because we need those. We need strategies, but really so much more, from somebody like Spencer, who's elevating to a life without limits, so we can all do the same for ourselves. And this is a masterclass for leaders and those looking to achieve uncommon results and purposeful outcomes through real estate investing and ultimately in their lives. And just a quick housekeeping: if you're enjoying the show, give us a subscribe. Give us a rating, a review, a 5-star rating, a 5-star review is certainly appreciated. Give us some specifics, some tactics. How are you applying this to your own life? And with that said, I want to go ahead and introduce you to Spencer, who is a passive real estate investor, a multifamily co-sponsor, and a former technology leader. His company, Madison Investing, has co-sponsored deals totaling more than 4,000 units for more than $500 million. Spencer invests in syndications as an LP, a limited partner, and actively leads Madison Investing alongside his co-founder/wife, Jennifer Morimoto?
You got it.
Boom. All right. See, I asked you how to pronounce your last name, and I didn't ask that one. So I apologize.
No, it's all good. No, you got it.
Good effort, at least, right? As a technology leader, Spencer built a 13-year track record of growing high-performing teams across 5 companies, 3 of them unicorns valued at more than $1 billion with a B. In November 2019, Spencer retired, quote unquote, from his lucrative technology career, leaving behind the $4 billion loan origination teams he built at Lending Home, funding 600 fix and flip transactions per month. Now he is focused on spending time with loved ones and growing Madison Investing by helping passive investors achieve their goals. So Spencer, what an amazing bio, first of all, but I'd love to know more about, Spencer behind the bio. Who is Spencer as a man?
Yeah. Well, thanks for the intro. And by the way, I think, Tyler, you were one of the only people who's ever asked ahead of time, how do I pronounce my Spencer's last name? So I appreciate that very much. It's Hilligoss. It's a doozy. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And super excited to be here. So me as a person, I'm a pretty straightforward dude. But I would say for someone that has been in a leadership track career in a corporate setting for so long, there's a few things about me that a lot of times people don't really know until they get to know me better. Examples would be, I grew up in a real estate household. I didn't just jump into real estate 4 years ago. So my dad was a broker. He was one of the top residential real estate brokers in the country back in the 90s. And so he really role modeled hustle, I think, for me. And I didn't really appreciate that at the time. I used to be like, why does dad wake up at 4 a.m. every day? And now here I am. I think I woke up at maybe 4:45 this morning. So, it's really come full circle. But he actually came from a very different upbringing and style of family. And the ethos behind it kind of sticks with me to this day. His whole side of the family were carnies, like carnival folk. So you probably haven't heard that on the show very much.
Wow, no.
So, so I wasn't as exposed for very long to that. I was probably just a toddler around the time that he got out of that. But lots of his side of the family and my side of the family, they still literally live that life. They drive rides around, and they actually they do it to county fairs and all that good stuff. So it's real. So that's a bit of family lore, but I bring it up because seeing my dad hustle to build a really successful, nationally performing, top 10 performing real estate brokerage business, it was insightful for me. And it sticks with me to this day because, you know, about, let's see, around the age 14, 15, I've been seeing him grow this business for about a decade. And he, unfortunately, watched that business disintegrate because we entered this period of time called this dark decade where my younger brother, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He passed away from that after a few years. It was a long time ago, but you know, that triggered a divorce, which it usually does when kids die, unfortunately, and from cancer, and their parents decide to split. So all these events occurred. Family went from high flying, really good income, and to coming down to a much smaller lifestyle, and that left a resounding impact on me. And very much as a dad now with a couple of kids of my own, I have two boys that are 2 and 5, and I'm trying to hold them at bay a couple rooms away, given the current context of coronavirus, of course, and all the shelter in place stuff we have out here in the Bay Area right now. But as a dad, I think that watching that upbringing, or going through that upbringing, watching my dad's business rise and then fall, and then watching our family have to downsize, it stuck with me in terms of hustle, in terms of appreciating what it means to play financial offense and defense, and really try to think about how am I constantly challenging myself to grow. And it wasn't just those events. It was also a couple quirky things. One more thing I'll add here too is that I don't really bring this up proactively a lot, but because we're going to go into professional development, personal development stuff, Tyler, I have been playing in punk rock and metal bands for about, I don't know, 20 years. And so, you know, and the collared shirt gets to cover up a bunch of tattoos. So, you know, it's that ethos that comes with that culture also is rather contrarian. And I think contrarian thinking at its best can help you land on great decisions. And so we could probably spend a whole talk just about that, but I wanted to bring that up because I think it's really helped me in ways in the business context that a lot of people wouldn't immediately understand. And so, you know, Carney, punk rock, hustle from entrepreneurship, watching my family. And I would just say that these days, really, I'd only perform music for my 2 kids and play Wheels on the Bus. And they love that. My audience sizes are very tiny these days.
That's awesome. Man, honestly, you know, believe it or not, I kind of got a little bit of chills there when you were describing all of that, because I could just feel the authenticity. And I really appreciate you just being yourself and being real about all this stuff and sharing sort of the, you know, the highlights of what you observed as a child, you know, seeing your dad really just have so much commitment into his career, into his brokerage business, and building that to be such a top performing sort of, you know, entity and organization in so many different ways. And then sort of, you know, observing like the natural progression of life. Sometimes, you know, things happen, right? And, you know,
Yep.
don't always necessarily stay on top, but, you know, what do we do and how do we observe that? And how do we react? And, you know, like you mentioned also, you know, we're going through a very, you know, odd time with this, you know, pandemic, this global pandemic. And, you know, folks are, you know, hunkering down into place. And it's like, well, you know, are we entering into a dark time into that regard, you know? So it's like, how do we apply the learnings, you know, that you may have observed from a very challenging family perspective, you know, into different perspectives as well. And so I just really appreciated that. But I also, you know, I love the thought of, there's a few things, you know, you talked about in terms of playing financial offense and defense. So I definitely want to go into that. I definitely want to go into the contrarian thinking, because, you know, that's really where I started to get a little bit of chills, because, you know, it's really not talked about much. You know, people, you know, everybody's really pretty buttoned up and, yeah, we're playing the right game. We're doing the right thing. And, you know, of course, having a little bit of a rebellious sort of attitude, you know, is accepted in many circles, but it's not something that we talk about much in real estate. So I'd be curious if you could go a little bit deeper there, because it certainly resonates with me in many ways. And I know it does for many of our listeners.
Absolutely, man. I super appreciate that you kind of grabbed onto that particular point, because I think a lot of times people are either they're not interested or they don't realize the power of it. And I'm very appreciative that you grabbed onto it, Tyler. So I think, you know, for me, I remember going all the way back to college, and I was reminded of this by one of my very best friends. We've been friends since early high school. He was one of my former bandmates. And he reminded me that in college, I wrote what was like literally a manifesto or something along those lines, very soapboxy, very self-righteous. And this is while I was like, I might have been working 3 jobs in college, but I was probably still getting a little bit of assistance from like my parents on just some expenses, right? So like I'm sitting there writing things about the problems of capitalism. I'm probably, like the stuff that's really, really, deep into those punk rock ethos points. And he reminded me of that, and that was relatively recently. And I'm sitting there going like, okay, I've been in the working world wearing. I was pretty much on a fast track in the corporate in the corporate setting for 13 years, leading very large teams. And I was at the age of 25, just as a side note for context, I was like thrust into leading a team of over 200 people in an entire facility based in Colorado. And so like I was thrown into leadership at a senior level way too early. And I learned a lot there. But I bring that up here because think about reconciling these 2 ideas. Early on, I think I'm super punk rock and, the man can't get me down. I'm never going to sell out. On the other side, you got this, I am leading teams of a couple hundred people and I'm supposed to be walking the line, being a good steward of the business, learning really critical business skills and management and leadership at a very aggressive pace. And so here we are now, and I'm sitting there going, man, like, am I confused, or is it just that it's okay to have conflicting ideas in our head at the same time, and reconcile those things to become a whole person? And I used to really struggle with that, but now I've come to truly believe it is the latter. Like we are the sum of our component parts and journeys, and I have found that it allows us to flip when we're analyzing a situation. Maybe it's a real estate deal. Maybe you're trying to understand the decision made by a seller. Maybe they changed their mind. The best decision making I have ever landed on, whether it's business related, personal related, or otherwise, mentorship or coaching related, if I'm coaching someone, it comes from a place of looking at that scenario and putting yourself in someone else's seat and trying to think of a situation from every possible angle, right? And so I guess hopefully this makes sense. I know we were going to get a little ethereal on the talk today, but contrarian thinking is critically valuable. And I often see people who struggle with that, they struggle to get into a mindset that is outside of a very, very mainstream perspective, and it limits their capabilities. I mean, and frankly, I think contrarian thinking is I would say actually, it is the single biggest driving force that saved me from a lifetime of corporate servitude. And most people don't get 13 years in to senior VP level roles in companies and find overcome the terrifying nature of that decision and then get out. And I really do think that, like, I don't know if it's the music, I don't know if it's the ethos, I don't know if it's just a bunch of feedback from people that are not in the business world that I still consider great friends. But I really am so damn grateful for that way of thinking, because it helps me confidently go take the leap into entrepreneurship. So that was a very long-winded answer. So sorry about that.
It was a phenomenal answer. I mean, it was that was deeply from within your soul. I could tell that. But the one thing that I see is, the most intelligent people, in my opinion, are ones who can hold these two, sort of opposite beliefs or opposite thoughts in their mind at once, and identify which sides of the issue have merit, right? And say, all right, well, maybe we can overlap here. And I know that the folks who are the most successful negotiators can put themselves in someone else's shoes and understand truly why they would make a certain decision in one direction or another. And I just think there's so much value in that, so much practical value in that, from a real estate perspective, from a business perspective. And obviously you were able to make decisions from a career trajectory, from a life trajectory perspective as well, to be able to hold the belief of, I'm on a great path here. There's a lot of great opportunities here, but perhaps there's a different path. So talk to me about, obviously you've got talent, you've got skills to be able to grow and lead other people. And obviously people saw that in you at an early stage. But would you say, was there a moment in time in your life where you basically just said, I'm committing to being uncommon? Or was that more of an unconscious thing in your life? Or just talk to me a little bit about that. Just curious.
Ooh, that's a darn good question, man. It wasn't like a conscious, I wish I could pin it down to a specific moment. I know a period of time when it started to make itself clear to me. And you really kind of made me think about this one. I mean, I would say that after my first 2 years in leadership, so I'd been thrust into management. I mean, as a quick side note, I thought after the first 2 attempts to get promoted into a manager job, most people want to be a manager because they have no idea why. They just want to go up a ladder. And so my first 2 years, I had been started my corporate career as a sales rep, not counting the internships I had prior. And I was so confused why I got turned down for a management spot, and I got turned down again. This is probably only 5-6 months after I took out my lip ring and cut my hair down, or I cut my hair from being like down on my chin. And so I was losing my rock and roll credibility. And so I was sitting there, not really conducting myself that professionally at work, not really like putting in as much as I really could to my full potential, and confused why I wasn't getting, why I wasn't getting the time of day for a leadership track. And I ended up quitting that first job, despite doing really well as an individual contributing sales professional. Kind of traveled the world a bit, despite making really great money. And then I was fortunate enough to have a mentor that was still at that same company, at this first company I was at. And he was willing to take me back. Like after I went and I gallivanted for a while and I traveled around Europe, and I don't know if I had an eat, pray, love moment, as it's been described back to me by very caring mentors. But I went off and did that, and he came back and he allowed me to rejoin this company, but it was under the following conditions. He said, you can come back if you take a customer support job, and you are going to get paid $14 an hour. You're going to go move to another state. And if you do well enough in the first 6 months, you will have a chance to potentially become a manager. And I did it. And so I moved out to Colorado. I drove myself through like the dead of winter in December, and I got stuck in like Wyoming in the middle of a blizzard. And I got out there and I became this customer support rep, just totally humbled, and I think that once I started to work my way up, and I got there, and I got to that management spot, and then I eventually got promoted to senior manager, and then eventually I was running the whole facility, and then I went on. But along that journey, I really came to realize, like, wait, like I feel like I care, like my degree of care in terms of how much I care about, I have curiosity for why things work, but also I care a lot that people are heard and listened to, but I care really, really, really strongly that people take their work seriously. And that doesn't mean you can't get lighthearted. That doesn't mean you don't tell jokes. I tell really, really awful dad jokes, and I have an incredibly sarcastic sense of humor. And I'd like to think I have a pretty good one, but I'm sure my wife would disagree. So I just bring that up because that period of time is when I realized, like, okay, I fought tooth and nail to get back up to the point where I thought I was at before on this management track. And that's when I thought, okay, I guess I'm a little bit different. I'm a little bit different, and my mentors were starting to tell me that. But it was still so early though, Tyler. Like I really didn't understand it even then, that you kind of only find yourself when you get kicked in the teeth by figuratively by life's hardships, and the scars. And so I really do think that like that was all corporate experience. I consciously chose, and I think the real final moment when I knew I was kind of a professional development weirdo was because I remember at a different company, this is flash forwarding to about 2013, I had just gotten a promotion to lead an even larger team, sales operations, sales organization, field sales, inside sales, operations, all these different groups at this really, really well-renowned unicorn company. It's a global company. I had gotten a big promotion, and I'm not bringing these up as bragging points. I'm about to totally undo all that wonderful stuff I just told you about, because I was being courted to go and join a A-series startup that I really, really thought was cool. They had a great product. And if I went to go take this gig, I would have to take a 40% compensation cut. And it would be probably 2 to 3x hours per week, and all that stuff frankly, it was a huge amount of work increase, and it was going to strain, what I didn't know is it was going to strain my relationship with my wife. Thankfully, we're still together now. but I ended up saying yes. And like, I ended up saying yes in that one moment in 2013 to going to an early stage startup. This was the first of multiple early stage startups where I was going to grind harder than I've ever ground before, in service of knowing the skills I would learn was going to outweigh all of the money that I could have made cash wise and get heavily taxed on, by the way. But, you know, I would have kept getting paid and not growing that much, but I chose to go grow hard through pain repeatedly. And that's when I was like, yeah, I guess I guess I think a little differently than a lot of folks.
Are you someone who is looking to seriously elevate your life this year? I mean, now, this year, 2020, because I want to let you know that I am currently opening up a few coaching spots for people like you who want to close the gap from where you are to where you want to be. And I want to invite you to visit coachwithtyler.com. Again, that's coachwithtyler.com. I have to tell you, this is not for everyone. This is only for those who are defiantly committed, those who are decisive, those who are coachable, those who are resourceful. They're willing to do whatever it takes. They're willing to sacrifice time, energy, and invest resources into themselves to get to where they want to be, to live life at the highest level, and to elevate to a life without limits, exactly what we talk about on this show. If that is you, I invite you to visit coachwithtyler.com. Again, that's coachwithtyler.com. That's awesome. Well, you mentioned being a personal development weirdo. And, you know, I have to respectfully agree with you because, you know, it's a contrarian sort of thing to be, you know, a punk rocker sort of, you know, base sort of an individual who then has grown through leadership, who's also then, you know, sort of made decisions in these different capacities in your career, personally, professionally, and so on and so forth. And, you know, then sort of made the decision to drop your income by 40% because you saw that it was an opportunity to grow, which I would imagine if you looked back, perhaps paid off. So tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, was that a situation that maybe you feel like you made the right decision on in terms of your own growth, and how has that paid off?
Oh man, it was like the beginning. If you were, you know, stepping back, Tyler, like I like to think that most of us at some point find a peaceful moment, enough of a peaceful moment to like think of our current circumstances when they're going well, and maybe outside the context of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
But like, if your life is going well at any given time, like tracing back, what are the key decisions that brought you there? And for me, that decision was one of the most big, well, it was one of the biggest decisions ever. The first one that I made that got me to where I am now, and I'm not making any differently, was the one to move out to Colorado and take a customer support job and make $14 an hour. The second most important career decision was to go and take that 40% pay cut, go to an A-series startup. That was the hardest work I've ever done in like the, you know, year and a half to 2 years that I was there. And I look back and I would make that exact same decision again. And it's because as an entrepreneur, man, I remember like one of the biggest mentors in my life. I'll leave him unnamed, but I'll just say that he's had a few quotable moments that stuck with me. And he mentioned this. He's like, Spence, I have met so many VPs, GMs who couldn't manage a gas station. And that really stuck with me because I have a problem with stuff that's inauthentic. And hopefully it's evidenced on this talk today. Like, this is just raw me. This is just kind of how I conduct myself. I strive to conduct myself. And I wanted to go and recapture those years that I had spent grooming, getting corporate grooming, which I would not trade out. I effectively got an MBA from going to like, you know, a Fortune 500 company. I was at Intuit for 5 years. And I really am thankful for that fast track that I was on there. I would not want to change that. But what I didn't get is what entrepreneurs usually get when they dive straight in. If they leave out of high school, they drop out of college, they go start a business. You learn pragmatic business building, and you learn how to hustle. And I somehow had that self-awareness moment enough. I couldn't even label it at the time to just say, I don't have that. Like, I don't have that. But I need that. And that was the driving decision force behind that.
You didn't have the pragmatic experience, or you weren't thrown into the fire as somebody who just really had to dive into the deep end and figure it out. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And effectively, so many wise folks that you and I look up to in the working world, what they'll usually say when people say, maybe, I'm at 30, what should I have? What should I be doing now? Or I'm at 20, or what should I be doing now? Or 25, what should I be doing now? The 20s, and in some cases, maybe late teens for a lot of folks, different for everybody. If you ask like the most brilliant folks out there, maybe Kiyosaki or others, they'll say, that's the time when you learn, and you learn by doing. Mm-hmm. And I learned by doing all this in corporate track. If you spend your 20s in corporate, you learn all these skills that help you win the ladder, that help you climb the ladder better, climb it more efficiently, and keep going up in that W-2 income. It doesn't help you navigate the matrix of actual life.
That's such a good point.
And so I was like, I don't want the ladder skills. I want the matrix skills. I want to be able to give me a laptop and go into a coffee shop and be able to run my business and actually know enough about this stuff to know what I'm doing. And I just had some sense like, I'm not there yet. So I got to go get around people that are smarter than I am, that are going to work harder than I've ever worked. And they'll pull me to this point, and they'll see how they work and operate. And I want to operate the way they do. I want to learn I want what they have. I want the skills and the knowledge that they have, but I'm going to have to humble myself. I'm going to have to take demotion. I'm going to have to demote my compensation. And it was not something I could have done necessarily if my wife, Jennifer, did not have her own badass career. Right. And she was earlier along there as well. But I can't tell any of the story without sharing credit with her. It is entirely, a partnership at every step of the way. And so whenever people say, oh, I did this, I did that. And in my case, like, we did this and we did that. Like I could not have had the confidence to go to an early stage startup unless I knew that she was there to support me, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all that stuff, but also financially. She had W-2 income, and so we wouldn't have been able to go buy a house and get a loan, if we didn't have good income. So yeah. Anyways, I'm going long-winded.
No, it's amazing. And, a lot of what you're talking about is really just taking an inventory and being aware of where you are and what skills and what trajectory are you on right now? What experience do you have? Where are you going? And I also think that it requires so much humility to grow as an individual at any point in time, because you could continue to go on the same trajectory, if that makes sense for you, or you could, humble yourself and say, you know what, I have a long way to go to get to where I want to be. And really to develop those skills, you've got to surround yourself with people who may have those skills. You got to get uncomfortable. And I just really honor you for that. But, a lot of what we've talked about so far has really been looking back and saying, you know what, we're tracing the path.
Mm-hmm.
You even said you tracing back decisions and key decision points that really, pivoted you in a certain direction. So, one of the ways that you and I connected originally was through talking really about looking forward and inspired, a thought process in terms of, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, which, we may go down sort of an esoteric path, but, I know you and I both really enjoy this discussion, and it's really inspiring and exciting. So, we've looked back. So I'd love to know, how are you looking forward now through the lens of what I just mentioned there, quantum physics, quantum mechanics?
Yeah. Probably more relevant now than ever, just like you and I were chatting about before we started this podcast, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so much of success, if you observe the people that kill it in the world, and meaning people that add the biggest value, and therefore life rewards them with the most in kind, whether that is financial or societal, like a Bill Gates or like an Oprah. I mean, these are people that have had such a profound giving impact on the world around them that stuff came back to them, both financially and beyond. So if you look at that and you study, like, okay, what are the fundamentals? Like, here are some of the fundamentals that I guess I did earlier on, but I was inconsistent. And the first one is going to be, it sounds so silly. And people, I think the people who are very, I'm trying to think of the right term for this, like the people who are very data driven to the point where they think things such as interviewing skills, or they think that conversational skills and negotiations are all soft and squishy and they don't mean something, will probably not appreciate this to its fullest extent, and that's absolutely fine. But I'll just say, deliberate positive attitude, and going out of your way to get to a point of positive attitude because you have the techniques and daily habits to get there, is a competitive advantage. And it is something that I have always been a positive person, but one thing I was not good at when I was younger, but I am quite good at today, is getting myself to that place. Because I don't wake up every day feeling happy. Like, I'm a human. Humans don't wake up happy every day. It's not how we're wired.
Yeah.
And if you're waking up happy every day, then good on you. There's something broken in your brain. Like, I mean,
or maybe we need to get them on this podcast. Maybe they can tell us what to do.
You got to figure it out. I mean, I'm sure that there are, I'm sure that there are people out there that can do that naturally, but for me, it's an effort, and it's not just coffee. So like, I go through, so much of the wonderful Hal Elrod Miracle Morning Steps. I don't follow that to a T. I use a couple pieces of it. I go down my list of what I'm grateful for. I go down, when I can, a brief journaling of where I'm at and how I'm feeling. I go down and I carve out time to reconnect with people in my life that I think are my best friends. I mean, the people that I am adding value to as their friend, and also just in kind. We enjoy each other's company. So all that stuff, positive attitude as first and foremost, is something that right now, more than ever, I really don't think that a lot of people out there realize how much of an impact they can have on those around them just by changing their language choices. I mean, like, just by going, if you're going to go on social media, because so much of us out there right now go out there for our news and also for self-indulgence. I get it. We got to all blow off steam and we all got to laugh. But find ways to be positive, find ways to add value and get action in front of people. Like give them techniques and tips and things that help you, as opposed to just saying, oh, like this or that is outside of my control. That's all fine. You're allowed to vent. I do as well. Does nothing to move you forward. Does nothing to help those around you. So I just wanted to mention the positivity thing first and foremost, because I think positives attract positives, and on a fundamental level, the vibing that you and I at least initially kind of felt, Tyler, was, I think, largely based on that. At least that's one of the things that matters a lot to me.
No, I agree. And exactly what you're talking about is choosing to develop habits and systems within your own behavior that can create positive emotions, positive energy, which can then be translated to how other people feel around you, how other conditions may coalesce to create sort of certain outcomes, which is really the thought process behind quantum physics. And a lot of people may roll their eyes, or they may pause the show and say, man, this is crazy. I just want to know, how can I find my next deal? Really, this is what we're talking about. And to build these relationships, like you and I connected based on this energetic level that neither of us can see, but we can feel that each of us are coming from the right place, and we're trying to serve humanity. We're trying to do the right thing. And, I just think it's so important to highlight that. And your daily habits and rituals are serving that. I mean, that's exactly what you're saying, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, absolutely. I think to that end, one of the things that I see folks often struggle with, just to be specific to real estate and make sure that folks can take value away from this from a real estate perspective and be pragmatic about it too. Just because we're talking about quantum physics and the implications of it doesn't mean that we're not going to tie this all the way back to people actually putting this into practice in your life. So one of the quotes that I'll drop is trust but verify. A lot of people get credited with that. I think it was actually Reagan that used it. I'm not a big Reagan disciple or anything, but I'll just say trust but verify is something that I think is important in business and in life. I bring it up now because oftentimes real estate investors that are getting out there and starting, I've been in commercial now, for coming up on 4 years, residential before that. But I would say they struggle with partnerships a lot. They struggle with relationship building. They struggle, and because they bucket into networking. I'm a guy that, oh my God, I'm an introvert through and through. Like it takes a lot for me to go into a big crowded room and find the tank, the spiritual and emotional tank, to go out and say hi to all these different people that I haven't met before. Much easier for me to have a conversation with you and I like this format, Tyler. So I bring that up because the way that you go out and you interact with people you want them to know if it's at a conference, if it's at a meetup. Maybe you sent a cold email to someone that you really think is a great operator that you want to partner with on a deal to go take down a large apartment or like a self-storage facility or a mobile home park or something like that. And you find this person and you approach them in a way that makes you seem really uncomfortable, and you seem like you're not putting positivity out there, and that you don't maybe understand what you're about, then they're going to feel uncomfortable just as much as you are. So that other person you're reaching out to, they're sitting there thinking, wow, this person doesn't seem like they really know themselves that well. And they seem a little bit uncomfortable with talking to me. Maybe, am I doing something wrong? So you're basically sending these signals to another person that something ain't right. And, when, like, for example, Tyler and I connected just on the floor of that Denver conference, at Best Ever Conference, like I had been following this podcast. I had been listening to Tyler's stuff. I really appreciated it. And then I was like, whoa, that's that guy. I mean, I haven't met Tyler before. So I just walked up and said hi. And it came from a genuine place, because I was like super appreciative of the content that I had taken away from this podcast in the past. And I was like, hey, like, yeah, at some point, let's continue the conversation. This has been great. And very generously, Tyler invited me to come on. So it's moments like that where people think they can engineer their way around it. And you just can't get away from the fact other people want to know what you're about. They want to know, are you feeling excited to talk to them? Or at least are you being authentic? These are all things that are the foundation of good partnerships. So if you want to go take down deals with people and you aren't quite sure how to articulate those things and exude that type of calm and that type of confidence, then you got to do some inner work. And the inner work is going to help you get there. I promise you that if you do that, you will have better relationships in the business context, not just in your personal context, but very much in your business context.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely abundantly clear, the inner work that you're doing when you talk, because you explain things so clearly, so eloquently. And so, I just really can appreciate that. And I can tell how much deep and how much committed work that you continue to put in on a daily basis. And, with that said, you're obviously doing great things in what you're doing in terms of real estate, partnering with so many great operators across the country, partnering with so many great investors and folks who are, really achieving great returns through what you're doing. So talk to me, from that context, I mean, how have you raised the bar recently in what you're doing from the business context?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, I mentioned this up front, Tyler, that so we're passive investors first. Every one of our deals now that we put out we run a club, Madison Investing Club. It's a club and a business. We invest in all these deals ourselves now, but it started just as us, meaning Jennifer and I, looking for the best passive investing strategy for our own capital. And as a result, I'm a big process nerd. So I built a simple framework that just looks at the operator, the market, and the deal. And none of that is revolutionary. You guys can go listen to dozens of podcasts and hear that particular point. What's underneath that framework is the work, right? And so I put all that work in, built this framework for how to evaluate our own deals that we can go and invest in. And then suddenly, like in our network, because I was talking about this really exciting stuff, great example of the concepts we were just talking about, Tyler, I was still working a day job at the time. I only left that day job about 3 months ago. And I was telling my coworkers and my friends, like, yeah, we're so fired up. We're going to go invest in this deal. And then they said, well, what is it? And they asked, well, how can I check it out? And then they asked, well, how do you vet these deals? And it was so organic, this is a few years ago now, but of course, friends and family started to want to invest and they would ask us about this. So we just said, oh, I guess we have a business here. And so, so now we have a co-sponsorship business. We're about 18 deals in, and it's been going and thriving. The thing I wanted to share more recently was that back in January, I think this is like one of the biggest learnings that we have gotten. And I really hope that listeners that are trying to ramp up in their business really take this away. It's like, I initially finally mustered up the courage back in like early 2019, I think it might've been 2018. And I started going onto just a couple podcasts, and I haven't been on a ton, but on a couple podcasts. We didn't get any traction from people following up after that. And so we sat down, Jennifer and I sat down, we're like, what's wrong? And it was because I wasn't speaking from authentic place. I was trying to basically be perfect. I was trying to articulate our our business. And, you can go listen to some of these earlier podcasts, even if you want to go to our website at madisoninvesting.com, you can just listen to them and you'll probably notice a tone difference. And more importantly, Tyler, like you'll notice a story difference. And what I mean by this is we sat down after those podcasts and zero response from those things. And we said, what is the unique story that I have to tell that got me to where I am today? And where's the emotional, where's the emotional resonating component of this? Like, where is it going to make people realize, like, I'm a real person. I deal with and have dealt with real challenges, just like everyone else out there. Mm-hmm. And this is how I've overcome them. And we engineered that and we rebuilt that, and it's fully authentic. And I can just say it in my sleep now. I did practice it 100 times before I went on that next podcast. We had a journalist from Business Insider in January listen to one of 6 podcasts that I went on, and I had shared that story. And he did a profile piece on me. And I don't know why the universe decided to have this awesome journalist named, come over and listen to me. And when he reached out, I thought he was trying to do some assassination piece on real estate. I was so confused and paranoid. I was like, dude, why are you trying to I was like, do you own any real estate? Like, how do you feel about real estate? Because he was like an equities guy and a stock trader from his background. and he was not trying to screw me, which was good. He was serious. He wanted to do a profile piece. So he did it. And we have had explosive growth. Like we've had explosive growth ever since then. Like we were already growing from word of mouth, and we're still growing from word of mouth. But when that happened, like I was doing 10 new investor onboarding phone calls every day for like a month, and so it was some kind of strange moment where the culmination of all these experiences put down into a story that was authentic, told on a podcast, heard by a journalist does profile piece goes out there. And then a flurry of other relationships, not just investors, but other partners hear that thing. And you want to talk about building third-party validation and credibility, that's how you do it.
That is awesome. And I can tell you that I've experienced the same thing myself. I do a lot of different talks, and of course I do the podcasts and I do other people's podcasts. And, I've been doing this for a few years, but like you, I'm always, I started out like, all right, the story's got to be perfect. It's got to be this. And, this is who I'm striving to be. So it's got to be, prepared in this way. But I've learned that the more authentic that I am, and I just show up as myself, the more people resonate with that. And it's so interesting too, is that, I think in particular, what I've experienced is that when I share my failures, when I share where I've fallen flat on my face, that's when people are like, oh, me too. Like, I get it. And you're actually approachable. It's like, wow, I'm not an idiot. I'm not a screw up myself. When you try to be perfect, that's when people are like, this is unapproachable. I don't want to do this. So with that said, has there been any particular failures, that you've experienced that maybe not just relatable, but something that have really set you up for later success?
Yeah. I'll probably choose. So the first one was particularly challenging for me. This one was at a startup that I was building a team, as an operations team, customer success and sales. And I had hired a lot of people in the past already. I've been building operations and sales teams for a long time now. Maybe at that time it was like 8 or 9 years. So long time in the tech world. And, I put together this financial plan for the year. And when you're the boss, you have these big, scary decisions. You have to sit there and say, we're going to go hire X number of people. And if you do that wrong, you're also the person who has to come back and let go of those people. If you do that too, if you hire too aggressively. And I went through that exercise, I would say unfortunately, but I would just say that like, it's par for the course and very normal in the course of building high growth startups where you rise and you fall and you rise and you fall in terms of headcount growth. And so from a hiring manager perspective, it's so exciting to hire. And I see actually lots of entrepreneurs right now. Maybe not right now that coronavirus is happening, but I would say up until about 3 to 4 weeks ago, lots of really, really new real estate companies were ramping up with hiring full-time people. And I'm on the other end of this growth journey where I have very little interest in trying to add headcount to this business, because what I know from brutal experiences of having to sit down across the table and let someone go that has kids, and have them cry in the office to my face because of my decisions. And I know I'm on the hook for that person's financial destiny. They are as well, but I have sat in that room and had to deal with that many times, and so if you think it's fun and exciting to grow a business, try dismantling one.
Mm-hmm.
And then really reevaluate if you're ready to go and pull the trigger on hiring that person. And furthermore, on making sure that you're doing all the other stuff that's associated with managing people, by the way, because management is freaking hard. It is brutally hard, and you don't want to do it poorly. I'd say a lot of managers in the world don't quite get the difference between leadership and management, and that's not a rip on them. They just haven't gone through that journey yet. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of mentorship out there in the corporate world. But I bring that up because, man, I would just say that failure, that was a doozy. And
Yeah.
I that sticks with me to this day. So I'm trying to keep the headcount lean until absolutely necessary, when I no longer can do all the parts of this business that I still do, even if it takes more hours for me to have to do it. I don't want to add someone in unless they're ready. I'm ready, and the business is ready to give them something that's meaningful over a long period of time. So that, I got to pick that one, Tyler.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And it's just a huge reminder as well of the level of responsibility that we have as entrepreneurs, as investors, what have you, in building a business, of the people that we're committing to while we commit to growth, while we commit to new opportunities, and also making decisions and recognizing that perhaps the sun is shining today, but does this decision still hold weight, when it's theoretically raining or storming or whatever it may be, whenever the conditions are not as smooth as they may be during that time. And so can you withstand blows? Do you have margin to, to help you in the bad times, and can you support other people, along those paths? So what a great reminder for all of us, especially, obviously the situation that we're both sitting in, currently today with coronavirus is certainly, that's front and center in all of our minds as entrepreneurs. But, a lot of people forget about that. I mean, I know for sure, like a week, 2 weeks ago, I mean, it was a totally different environment. So are you ready to adapt at any moment is absolutely where we all have to be. So man, this has been a ton of fun, and I want to be super respectful of your time. I know we might have to do this again because we didn't even get to dive into any leadership. But with that said, really quickly, I want to dive into our rapid fire section. We call it the Rare Air Questionnaire. It's all about really pushing those limits, scaling to the mountaintops, looking across the valley and saying, look, we've got several more mountains to climb, and we know there will be more behind that. So talk to me a little bit about books. I'd love to know, 2 or 3 of the most impactful books that you've read and why.
Yeah. First one, right off the bat, real estate focused. And I, can't get off a real estate podcast without saying it, is the Purple Book, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh yeah.
When I hear stories of people who were force fed that book in their early years, and they're like, why did my parents make me read that book? I thought it was stupid. I kind of wish my parents had done that to me, because I didn't discover it until 5 years ago, So that was a hugely impactful book. I would not be sitting here as an entrepreneur without that book. And so that next book, I would probably say 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, because it got me early, by Stephen Covey. I think that, like, although, I'm not a big religious person, I know that underpins a lot of that work, and frankly, a lot of personal development work is underpinned by that. I'm still a spiritual person, because I think every human is spiritual, because they have to be on some level. We don't have to go down a religion rabbit hole here. I just wanted to mention that, because I think the skills and habits outlined in that book are relatively universal, and I find that to be critically important for building habits, and habits are everything. Maybe give a runner-up for that habits-based book to Charles Duhigg and The Power of Habit. I think the one I'm looking forward to reading while we're on the topic of habits is Atomic Habits. I have not read Atomic Habits, but I've had like 20 people recommend that book to me. Last but not least, I would actually say The Millionaire Next Door has been, I probably listened to that on audiobook while running probably 3 times in a row, because it just, I was wrestling with that same journey that W-2 corporate employees go through when they're like, how have I gotten this so wrong for so long? You know? So I really thought, the whole prodigious accumulator of wealth and, under accumulator of wealth and the UAW, PAW thing, if I'm using those correct terms correctly still, I don't even know if I am, but those were some of the heavier hitters. Oh, got to give a plug, by the way. I know you said 3. Is essentialism. Like anyone that knows me, they know I'm a huge efficiency nerd, and I gotta give that book credit. I've loved that book, man. It is so good because it gives you specific ways of saying no, and in service of focusing on your key priorities. And where most people fail on this front is because they don't have the words to get away from social awkwardness when they know they have a top 3 priority set for the week. A good friend says, let's grab a coffee. And in that moment you fold and your 3 priorities go out the window because you couldn't just muster the words, now's not a good time, I got to go deliver on this other thing.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's a phenomenal book. And certainly I have to give a shout out to all the other books that you mentioned there. So many great books. Thank you for breaking the rule there of 2 or 3. I want to know 20. I mean, come on. I love that. It's such a good highlight to the fact that, to do, great work professionally, you've got to be working on yourself. You've got to be developing your own skills, whether it's your habits, whether it's just the capacity to, get through an awkward social situation and say no to someone. It's not an easy thing to do. We all want to please others, most of us, even if you're an introvert, whatever it may be, you want to be nice. I mean, I know that this social distancing situation that we're dealing with right now is extremely awkward. It's like, how do I not shake your hand? I don't understand this. But to your point, I mean, there's so much value there. So Spencer, aside from our discussion today, what's the biggest way that you elevate your life on a daily basis?
Oh, I think one thing I stopped compromising on when I became an entrepreneur was family comes first, unflinchingly. And I think a lot of times people say that, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at all. Like I missed the mark on that one, but I will cut an entirely full afternoon worth of meetings because suddenly Jen has something that she has to take care of and it's urgent. And it's like, unless it's something I can't move, I'll move mountains to accommodate that. I will drop everything to go pick up my kids as needed and do that. I think that, like, if you ever have in that back of your mind, I'm not doing everything I could be doing to be a great parent or be a great husband or a great wife or whatever that role might be, it seeps into every other aspect of your life. And so, like, I just never want to feel like I'm not delivering on that. And as a result, it just creates a positive snowballing effect for everything else. I think the one other thing I was going to be more specific about for the folks that are out there that may not have kids or be married, I use this technique that a mentor taught me, Tyler, and I use this pretty religiously now every week, which is the clean slate. And what it means is every week, I at least want to know, like, what is the number one biggest deliverable, maybe 2, but usually it's like 1 that it has to get done. And if it has to get done, I look at my calendar and I just simulate. In some cases, I'll actually do this. I'll just wipe the whole calendar and readjust the entire week around delivering that one thing. And the only reason that you wouldn't do that is because of social awkwardness and coming all the way back to essentialism. So I would just say that you can get an incredible amount of stuff done if you're willing to clean slate.
That's awesome. And I love just the practice of focusing on what is the one thing that I can accomplish, today or this week or whatever it may be that can make that day effective or impactful, towards what are you looking to create in your life. And also having the priority of family and things that are more important than business, or that the business or real estate is the vehicle towards this. So how are you making sure that you remain focused there as well? So 2 phenomenal points there. So talk to me, what's the biggest way that you elevate others around you, Spencer?
Yeah. Years ago, I got labeled as like the get real guy by a former boss of mine. I would say that I help. I don't have a formal coaching program, but what I strive to do is I strive to help people see the situation with absolute clarity that they're in. And I do that when I was younger. I didn't really know what it meant to be inquiry driven. This is like corporate buzzword thing, but I'll throw it out there. For about 7 years in a row, I got the coaching of leading with inquiry versus advocacy. And that is the most corporate way possible of saying, are you telling people what to do? Or are you asking legitimate, authentic, and direct, open-ended questions, listening to the response, and then asking the next logical one in an ever-deepening fashion until you get down to them realizing and saying, hearing their own words and saying it out loud, where they are at. And that's what I try to do as often as I can if I'm interacting with people. Is it just stems from authenticity and wanting them to realize, like, if they ask for help, like, I want to be able to help them that way, but that they have to come to their own conclusions for it to stick. It can't be something you can't just tell someone, oh, here's what I would go do. It's not going to stick.
Man, that is it's a little bit of an insight into the difference in a manager and a leader, which is really, what I really wanted to dive in today. But man, we could spend hours and hours and hours. So I'd want to be super respectful of your time. But do you have any parting thoughts or words of wisdom for Elevate Nation?
I would just say, first and foremost, thank you, Tyler, for bringing me on. I would absolutely love to come back and have that leadership conversation whenever you're game. As it turns out, I'm at home. So as we all are right now, I would probably say, that personal development is as corny as you want to consider it. It's as authentic and real as you want to consider it. And the people who talk a bunch of trash about professional personal development not being something that's real are typically the people that you not see that they're not going to achieve success. And so you got to just take it seriously. And you got to take yourself seriously, just enough. Not too much, right? But you got to take yourself seriously and invest in yourself. And it's not about how many books you read. It's about picking the right ones for you and applying those concepts.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not about the quality, the quantity. It's about the quality. It's about the application. It's about trial and error. It's about making it happen in your own life and sharing that with other people around you. And really just want to extend some extreme gratitude for you for sharing your wisdom and your journey, because I know it's helped so many people today. And, with that said, Spencer, tell the listeners how they can remain engaged with you and what you're doing personally and professionally.
Yeah, happy to. So feel free to reach out if you want to connect. My email is spencer@madisoninvesting.com. We have a website, and our website is madisoninvesting.com. So we do have like an investing club. You just click a big button on the top right of our site if you want to fill out a quick application to join. So what we do primarily is multifamily syndications, a couple other asset classes, though. I mean, clearly, I would say right now, it's a unique market landscape. So I am kind of holding off on reviewing a ton of new applications right now at the moment, but feel free to reach out. I'm still happy to have that conversation with you anytime. So please do.
Yeah, again, that's madisoninvesting.com. So we'll put a link there in the show notes. And of course, I know that Spencer's active on LinkedIn as well. He shares a lot of great content there. So make sure you go follow him on LinkedIn, get to know him a little bit better there. And, with that said, I would certainly highly encourage you to re-listen to this show, because there's a ton of deep wisdom here. There's a ton of things that we can really apply to our own business, to our own life right now, immediately, and learn how does that fit for us. And, one of the biggest things that I share so frequently is that you've got to become the teacher in this circumstance. How can you teach this to someone else? How can you share this with someone else so that it anchors into your own understanding? And so it just becomes habitual. So you're just acting it out. You're not having to remember all of the deep wisdom here. It just becomes who you are. And so I think that's so important. But the biggest thing is to take massive action. And expect there to be some course corrections that you need to make. What is it that you need to, gain that feedback and become more effective in what you're doing? And so, with that said, Spencer, I really want to thank you again for being here on the show today.
Yeah, it's been a blast. And I'm really looking forward to having that leadership conversation next time, Tyler. That'll be awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. And Elevate Nation, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit tylerchesser.com.